Welcome to Education Matters, presented by the Public School Forum of North Carolina. I'm your host, Amos Fodchuk. Last month, federal agents from U.S. Immigration Customs Enforcement, or ICE, and Customs Border Patrol, or CPB, arrived in North Carolina, and it was recently announced that agents will likely remain in the area through the month of December. Today, we're taking a look at what that means for students, families, and local communities at large. Our guests are Emily Chavez, school board member for Durham Public Schools, Janice Ramirez, co-executive director, Education Justice Alliance, and Tony Macias, organizer of Durham Public Schools Strong. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to jump right in and maybe start with you, Tony, with this opening question. What are you hearing directly from community members about how ICE and CPB presence is affecting their daily routines?
Thank you, Amos. Thanks for having us here, and I'm happy to speak to that question. I was in front of my school yesterday afternoon as part of our school-based care and protection team, standing there, welcoming parents and children into the school, and then at the end of school, watching them leave and waving them out. In the morning, a person pulled up and let their kid out and asked us, as a Spanish speaker, what we were doing, and I was explaining, and then she just started pouring out all of the feelings that she's been having in fear. That's just been happening a lot on text threads in our school. The families that I know and speak to, people are very afraid and they have so many questions. A lot of parents have asked me, do I drive to work? Do I stay home again? Can I go get groceries? Do I bring my kids to school? Are they safe in our schools? The question keeps coming up again. And I understand that because while our schools are wonderful places, our public schools and are very safe for me and my children, a lot of people don't know enough about what would happen if ICE or Customs Border Protection were to show up at the school. And so they're just wondering, and a lot of them would rather have their children close by during moments of uncertainty. And so many of them are missing school. Even this week, we've had some students missing school in our kids' classrooms. And so that's what folks have been telling us. Just a lot of questions. Also a lot of gratitude for the support that they've been seeing, the solidarity that is being shown to them. So it's a mixed bag. People are still coming to school. They're still going to work, not only because they have to, but they say, ICE has been here all along. We have had to be careful and we take risks every day for what we believe in. And we believe in taking care of our families and getting our kids to school. So I'm hearing a lot of different things, Amos, but a real uptick in fear from parents and wondering how to even talk to their kids about it.
Thank you, Tony. Janice, I know that and your organization are frontline as well and are working day to day, hour to hour with families, students, educators in and around schools. What are you seeing?
Very similar to Tony, and thank you again for having us here. Similar to Tony, I think, for us, it was really rapid response as well as, Public School Strong in Durham on responding to the needs of our families and our community members. And one of the biggest things that we've leaned into is supporting families with their children getting to school. It was mentioned how many children are missing school because of the fear and because of the terror. And it's as small as not just taking them to school, but taking them to the bus stop is a real fear in a lot of these communities that have been terrorized, have been targeted by CBP and ICE across, Raleigh Triangle area. And so we have been very diligent about listening to what it is that our families and our students need and reminding them of what their rights are and their rights to talk to the school districts, right? And that was something that Tony mentioned, right? Like not really knowing what the rules are, what's happening. There's a lot of rumors that are going around from across, the social media to, phone calls. You call your friend, you call your tia. I heard this, I heard that. And so, we have been trying to support families and thinking about their mental health and thinking about how do we talk about that and the longevity of what this trauma is going to be moving, into whenever this is over, if it is over anytime soon. And so we're just hearing a lot of that from our families of like, how long is this going to last? What do we do? But at the very least, we're supporting and finding those very specific strategies and folks to get a hold of, ways that you can contact your schools and contact your teachers and school district to support on long term.
Thank you, Janice. And Emily, as a Durham Public Schools board member, you are overseeing from a 100,000 foot view the schools of an entire city. Can you share your perspective on what you've heard from community members across uh, all the schools in Durham? What's happening and what's showing up on your radar?
There's a lot of different there are a lot of different pieces to this. I have, in my role over the course of this year, tried to be a connector of sorts, and just support the listening to community, because we are we need to do that. We have to do that. We are in an institution where those unlike some other marginalized identities, undocumented individuals are not represented generally among the leadership of an institution by nature of the barriers around legal status. And so that puts a even more of an impetus on us to listen to community members, and to seek the knowledge from those most directly affected, the expertise of those individuals, to guide us in our decision making. And one thing that we have done as well is our superintendent has created listening sessions with immigrant families that I think have been really helpful, based on the data that I saw around them. But I think that those kind of spaces allow for people to speak directly, parents, family members to speak directly with our school leadership about what they're experiencing, what their fears and concerns are.
Yeah, thank you. It's absolutely critical to maintain not just listening, but dialogue, and that to me is what it sounds like, is maintaining a close connection with community members, and earning that trust every day by listening to secure the most complete, accurate, and rapidly evolving information possible for a large organization like Durham Public Schools to remain agile. After the break, we'll continue our discussion on how immigration enforcement efforts are affecting our communities and schools. Welcome back. Let's hop right back into our discussion of the impact of recent and ongoing immigration enforcement efforts throughout North Carolina. I hope that we can make this as real as possible for our viewers. And this next question is really for any and all of you. I'm interested in the tactics that are being used by immigration enforcement that are directly impacting students, families, and educators. Can you speak tangibly to tactics that are happening in our communities now?
So in the beginning, and in the beginning, as in the week before last, a lot of this feels like an eternity, the last, 2 weeks. But there were neighborhoods that were specifically being targeted, and I'm talking about Wake County, and I know it's fairly similar in Durham and in other places like Charlotte, targeting neighborhoods who have predominantly immigrant community members, high Latina population. They were apartment complexes, mobile parks. They were different neighborhoods, again, that were identified as high, honestly, non-white neighborhoods, right? And so what we were seeing is in one apartment complex in particular, there were ICE agents in the woods at night, masked, dressed, in their gear, drones in neighborhoods that are still terrifying neighbors, right? Like we have gotten reports of the drones in particular in the evening times in still some of these neighborhoods. Folks in the beginning also, and these agents in particular, with vans parked outside of these different neighborhoods. And these things have caused extreme fear in our families and our community members. And so we mentioned earlier this piece about families being scared to even take their children to the bus stop, to go to work, to go pick up groceries, to go play outside, to go up play outside with their children. This is a real terror. So it's very different. Think a lot about the emotional impact that the pandemic had on our students and on our families. This is a little bit different. Well, there was a fear of how, getting sick, right? And that's why we were at home and we were putting these protocols in place. But the way that these agents and these agencies have actually caused so much fear and not knowing and panic, right? Where it's like, do you ignore some of these rumors? Do you take the safe side to stay inside, to stay indoors? This is a a terrorizing situation for our families and our communities. And I think that one of the things that concerns me the most is that and I speak from an education side, is that my concern is that we don't know how to respond to behaviors that shift in children when they're responding to trauma, right? When they're
Exactly.
responding to fear. We had a teacher yesterday at one of our trainings, and there were several teachers, but this one teacher came up to me after we were finished and said, every single day I'm missing 7 to 8 kids in my classroom. And that has been since, 2 weeks ago, and I don't know how to help. And sometimes when they come back, I don't know what to say, right?
Yeah.
And so this says a lot about how what's missing, the gaps in being able to support our families and our students, but how these tactics and these strategies from these agencies have really caused some real fear and trauma that's going to last for a long time in our children and our families and our community.
Yes, entirely. I haven't kept an exact word count, but I've heard the word terror at least 6 or 7 times. And I don't think that's by design. I think that is a very clear description of the feeling that people have, families and uh, adults and kids have in our communities right now. Any other tactics that you're seeing in your interactions with families, students, and teachers, Tony, Emily?
I think terror is the word. And terror is a thing that multiplies itself on its own. It propagates, not unlike a virus, I guess, if we're going to talk about COVID and about this situation with immigration enforcement. Uh, it is designed, it would appear, to produce fear, and then fear reproduces itself. And so what we've seen in terms of tactics, you know, 8 years ago, agents picked up a student waiting for school at the school bus. Became a very well characterized case and really galvanized our community in support of students, recognizing, oh, it's not just our school buildings, it's not just our neighborhoods or our homes, it's not on the street, it's not in jails or at traffic stops, some of the places where immigration enforcement tends to linger, but it could be when you're waiting for school and you're a student who wants to get ahead, who wants to be a part of the community that you actually belong in. And I think that's an important point here. This isn't, sometimes it seems like it's a question of welcoming. You are welcome here. I don't, I don't like that language because we already know that these communities and these folks belong. Why would you welcome someone who already belongs? And in many cases, some of these folks have been here longer than the people doing the welcoming. And so, humbling ourselves, as you were saying, Emily, to really listen to the community who is already here, many of whom, especially the children, this is the home that they know, and they deserve the respect of being listened to and of the respect that is shown and being cared for in these moments of fear. And so, when a student is picked up at the bus stop by ICE and detained, the whole community got together and said, "This is not okay. Not just because we want to welcome this person, but because this person is one of us and belongs here, and we can't afford to not take care of each other." So we know that they have used bus stops in the past, although I haven't heard that recently. There's a lot of lingering, parking in a parking lot and just sitting and waiting. That's been here in the Triangle region and in Charlotte and also in other cities and states, just camping out and being intimidating. Wearing the masks is a tactic, right? These are fear tactics. Sitting around and waiting for someone to come out is a fear tactic. Going into, in some cases, not in the Triangle, but elsewhere, actually going into buildings after people who don't understand their rights around private zones. This has also been employed. But then I would just say that once you do a little bit, and they can afford to be quite sloppy, can't they? The CBP and ICE don't have to be particularly good at their jobs to sow fear and terror, which I also think is intentional. But we know that their tactic of sowing fear has worked very, very, very well. So if that's their goal, they've definitely met their goal. And by showing back up here again and working with state legislators to continue this story of producing fear here, well, they've done a really great job of that.
Tony, that's chilling. Emily, I would love for your follow-up here as it relates to families and students who are uh, impacted by their immigration status, their language access, or even economic barriers. Like some of our most vulnerable subgroups in a community that is relying on public education to advance their children. What is the impact of these tactics with our most vulnerable neighbors?
Let me speak to the tactics a bit zoomed out, and
Okay.
I think um, Janice and Tony just laid out um, so many of the ways that ICE, or Border Patrol, is operating in this moment, that doesn't play by rules, and this piece around terrorizing people. I think we need to. I think we need to understand that while there's this kind of rhetoric around that's come with this administration around deporting all of the undocumented people. Well, that's actually not the goal. The goal is to terrorize people because this country would collapse without the labor of undocumented people. And so many industries are dependent upon this exploited class, labor class. And so imagining that we could somehow just remove all of these people who don't belong here, that's not really, that's a justification. That's a very, you know, a constructed way of talking about this, but it is not really the goal. The goal is to keep people in their place, and we're seeing with that the racial profiling. We've all seen images of people who do have papers, and that's what we're talking about when we're talking about people who can be kidnapped and abruptly removed from their lives and their families, and people who cannot. We're talking about documents that people in power have said these are the right documents to have. That's what we're talking about. It's not something inherent to anyone's identity. We're seeing that racial profiling. We're seeing the just kind of ominous threats of people. But this is a way to keep people, to attempt to keep people in their place. And I just want to say that, and this is why education is so important to bring it full circle. History repeats itself. This is not new in our history. We can look to the time of legal slavery, the Jim Crow era, and times when people were terrorized so that they would not resist, or that was the goal, and resist white supremacy, resist exploitation. Okay, but we have always, this country was built on the labor of exploited people and continues to be. So I think that is part of the larger tactic, in this project, and the effects on parents and children. Of course, we don't even know the magnitude.
Thank you, Emily. What I'm paying attention to in the media and trying to get the best possible data that I can is the proportion of deportations as a function of arrests and or apprehensions. And it seems to me that a lot of the people who are apprehended in these raids are never truly deported, and that sometime after their arrest, they are back in the community again. And to me, that underscores exactly what you're describing. Is that an accurate assessment that the presence is not actually resulting in a high turnover of deportations?
I would just say that we know that they've been exaggerating their numbers. They've had their wrists slapped several times about this publicly. The head of CBP exaggerating, inflating numbers in California. We know that in Charlotte, they picked up a bunch of people that they had to release because they were US citizens. They're racially profiling people. And again, once again, their goal is to spread terror and to tell their base that they are succeeding in making our communities unwelcome for the outsiders that they blame for all of our problems. And so I think that they are meeting their goal in that regard.
After the break, this week's final word. I want to thank our guests, Emily, Janice, and Tony, for not only sharing what's happening in our communities, but what it means for students, families, and the educators who walk with them every day. I also want to share a story of my own. In 2010, I was working in rural high schools across central Louisiana. Most weeks, I stayed at a Hampton Inn just outside of Alexandria and drove the back roads through 9 surrounding parishes. I often ate breakfast with immigration officials, federal vehicles in the lot, badges on their belts. We didn't discuss our daily work, but the local paper told me enough. America's immigration enforcement focused on workplaces, meatpacking plants, interstate restaurants, warehouses. It was visible, transparent, and part of our reality. But it wasn't what I'm seeing today. Now, across places like Chicago, Charlotte, Raleigh, and Durham, I hear about families intercepted while taking kids to school, relief agencies being surveilled, officers hiding their identities. That's not just a shift in policy, it's a shift in values. Educators across our state are being deeply impacted. Teachers are fielding new, heartbreaking questions. Will my mom be here when I get home? Counselors are having conversations they were never trained to navigate about raids, separations, disappearances. School nurses are treating stress-induced stomach aches and sleeplessness. And social workers can't reach families afraid to even open the door. These aren't isolated incidents. Entire schools are being forced to shift their focus from teaching, mentoring, and celebration to crisis response and emotional triage. Is this what we want? Schools should be sanctuaries of possibility. They're sacred community spaces, not battlegrounds, not surveillance zones. When families feel hunted, when educators feel helpless, when kids feel unsafe, that's not a policy issue. That's a moral one. I say this as a parent, as a business owner, as an educator, and as a neighbor. I want to live in a state where we don't just protect our own, we protect each other. That starts by defending schools as spaces where every child, regardless of immigration status, feels safe to show up, to learn, and to belong. Watching from the sidelines is no longer an option for me. And so I ask you, what is your choice? Will you stand with children? Will you listen to educators? Will you commit to protecting schools as places of dignity and humanity? I believe that we can, and I believe that we must. The Public School Forum of North Carolina remains steadfast in the belief that public education is for every child. We believe that fear and intimidation should never override the simple but powerful promise of a place where children learn, grow, and belong. We'll continue advocating to make that a reality for every child in North Carolina, and I urge you to do the same. Thank you for taking time with us to learn and think about education. Be sure to join us next week for the conclusion of today's discussion.